Hi, welcome to this week's bonus clip. I've been joined by Conor Cronin and Tom Coleman. We recorded this as part of our rap pod following the Leinster v Stade Francais match, which you'll find on Apple, Spotify, and all the other usual places. Now, we're going to try to do these a little differently for the next while. Instead of all three of us harping on one topic, I've asked my guests to pick their own and have a bit of an old rant for a little bit. Starting with yourself, Conor, you want to harp on something Bernard Jackman was saying about Champions Cup squads?
Yeah. There's all the talk about how you send a weakened team and how it devalues the contest and disrespects the competition as a whole. And I'm gonna read directly what Bernard Jackman said. It was EPCR need to look at this. It's too easy to play a second choice side, and it's impossible to fine a club as they're not going to admit it's their second string. The solution is potentially, like a World Cup here, pick a 33 or 34 man panel and you can only change players for an injury. The teams are being shortchanged. The fans are being shortchanged, and even Leinster are being shortchanged as they want a better hit out. So, I mean, this is the implication that for anyone on Seat Watch, the 42,003 Leinster fans in the stadium the other day were shortchanged because Stade Francais should have sent a stronger, more effective, and essentially a first choice team. Now, part of the problem here, and I know you've personally harped on it, is the need for a calendar where, we play these games in blocks, where we play these, even if we're saying we play these 4 pool games in a 4-week window, and we're not concentrating on domestic leagues, and we're not worrying about, but I've got Montpellier away in 2 weeks' time, and I really don't want my lads to be weakened for that. I can see where the French mindset comes from. But I do like the idea that everybody sends their best. We do it. I think the only year we didn't do it was a year where everything started so badly we couldn't qualify. And so Leo sent the kids out to play to give them the exposure and to give them the opportunity and to give them the time. And, and that's really stood to us now. And, you could say there's a couple of those Stade players. One of them, I can't remember which player it was. One of them, it wasn't just his first start in the Champions Cup. It was his first start. Had never started for Stade before the weekend. And you're starting them against, a team who can be seen as serious contenders for the title. It does beggar belief sometimes how the French get away with sending these weakened squads. Now, with that said, Sale were accused of sending a weakened squad, and they kept the points difference pretty low and did a very good job of doing it. And sometimes the team works out well that way. But the idea of having a 33, 34, even if you said a 40-man panel, so that you can include a few of those younger players and have a bit of rotation happening. But for that to work effectively, you may have to have them, as I say, have the 4 games in a block, or however many games we're having in pool stages, as the competition no doubt gets another change next year. I think there's a lot to be said for everybody doing their best and not relying on, it's grand. We have, I know Tom talked about it on the pod, Racing have Cardiff at home, and that'll be enough. If they win with a bonus point and get a decent number of points on the board, that's enough to see them through to the last 16. That's ridiculous. How can you only win 1 game and go through? There needs to be essentially a revert back to the old model. 4 home and away ties. You look at Leinster versus Northampton in, what year was that? Can't remember what year it was, where we went and we absolutely hockeyed them in Franklin's Gardens, and then they came to the Aviva a week later and upped their game and beat us because they sent a strong team, because they respected the integrity of the competition. So let's encourage that. Let's encourage this sense that competition matters, And it doesn't just matter for a couple of games. It should matter for all the games. And maybe Jackman's idea of a squad of X number of players, it's got merit. Is it the correct solution? No. And in fairness, he says himself, it's a solution. It's a suggestion that might prevent it. But we need to do something that prevents these second string squads, so-called second string squads. The coaches would never call them that. Look, if I'm a 23-year-old making my first start for a club, and I'm seeing in all the newspapers, ooh la la, Stad sending a second string team, and I'm being reminded I'm not first choice all the time. And there's a little bit of incentive there to say, well, maybe I should be, and I could do a good job tomorrow, and that'll make me first choice. But you come away with the loss, and then it's a reminder that, but I am only second choice. So there's a lot to be said for strong teams and the strength of the competition as a result of strong teams.
Yep.
Just wouldn't mind just finishing off your point there. Like next week, we might be deprived of maybe the match of the round if Bordeaux decide to send a weekend team down to Pretoria, because I think a full strength Bordeaux versus the Bulls in Pretoria would be something any rugby fan would watch. But I think they've got a match against Stade Francais. You mentioned just power about what's happening in the top 14 the following week. I think they're playing second to be third. They play Stade Francais, and maybe they've one eye on that. And who knows what sort of team Northampton are going to send to Munster, even though they've got the small queue qualified. But I think the competition needs those fixtures to be.
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't have to choose, basically. I mean, the whole point, the Champions Cup is supposed to be a level up. It was brought in initially to be almost practically test level rugby, for teams so the players can get ready for the likes of the Six Nations and stuff. But that's the standard. It's supposed to be above the domestic league, but because you've got some teams, like you say, you lose one or two games and you might be out, and you've got a more important game to get into next year's competition. The following week, that's why they're doing it. And they shouldn't have to choose. But anyway, listen, they're like you say, that the squad thing is like you say, it's a suggestion, and we'll see what they do down the line. Okay, so Tom, over to yourself now. You want to talk a bit about Munster's predicaments?
Yeah, I think, there's a before and after this conversation. I've just talked about the length of the size of Munster's injuries. There's an article in the Irish Independent early in the week about basically John Klein being ruled out for the rest of the season. And, we know about RJ Sneeman's woes. He's out from March, and John Poe got a bad injury against, I'm trying to remember who it was against, but the casualty list of about 21 players, which is huge, really. I'm sure there'll come a point in, some of it's unlucky, some of it's you'd wonder, some of it's strength and conditioning. But look, the fill up for them on the back of that injury list is they're able to pull a win out of the bag against Toulon the weekend. So in fairness to them, you have to give them credit there. I don't know how long they can sustain that, because you can get those highs, emotional highs, where they get up for a European game. But and they did get a few back, obviously getting Peter O'Mahony back and a few others, Niall Scannell back, helped and give them a little bit more depth. But it's really going to plague Munster coming into the Six Nations, as well as they're going to lose a few players to the Irish camp on top of the injuries that they had. It's very difficult to manage their squad going forward. But still, as I said, 5 months into the season, they got their first away win, so credit to them there. It was a big win from them down in Toulon, and it looked like the season was on the cusp of unraveling, as they lost key games over the Christmas period, and after a draw and a loss in the Heineken Cup, they looked like they were in trouble of even qualifying. But this win over in Toulon has given them a bit more breathing space. But managing the squad just from looking at it from the outside in, managing the squad now and who'll be dealing with those key injury players for the next few months is going to be really, really difficult. And more so, as we mentioned, Murray and Casey and Crowley and probably likes of Calvin Nash and etc. will get called up to the Irish camp. Maybe John Hodnett or Tom Ahern, form guys like that. So the downside of not the downside, the upside always, because you want your players who you shout for week in. It doesn't matter what colour you are, but we're talking about red in this instance. You want them called up to the Irish camp. the problem for Munster is their squad is so shallow given the amount of injuries. All these players people are crying to call up, and rightly so, is going to really leave them tight for positions over the next while in the URC. And look, the URC is back next week or whatever. It hasn't gone away. And obviously Munster still have to qualify for the Heineken Cup again. So it'll be interesting how their squad is tested over this period of time.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what happens there. Well, that just leaves me with my topic, and I've entitled mine "A Tony Bridge Too Far." 2024 is an Olympic year, and of course, it has been great for rugby union to have been included as a discipline, even if it is the shortened sevens versions of the game. And from an Irish point of view, we have both genders taking part in the tournament in Paris, and going by the way they played so far in the world circuit, there's every possibility of us to be in contention for a medal, or even two, all going well. But what I'd like to harp on here is specifically the decision to include Antoine Dupont in the French squad for the tournament. Obviously, there are many benefits from this. France will certainly want to do well on their own patch, especially given how the World Cup turned out. And anyone who watched the Ulster-Toulouse game on Saturday evening will know he's still very much at the top of his game. And given how he can create space from nothing on a pitch with 30 bodies on it, you can only imagine how he'll tear it up in sevens. So when the games are actually taking place at the end of July, it should be a good advertisement for all forms of the sport. For me, though, none of those positives outweigh the downsides. Obviously, for this, I have to take off both my Leinster and Ireland hats, because the fact that he'll be unavailable for both the Six Nations and the business end of the Champions Cup certainly won't hurt our chances at all. But with an overall rugby supporters hat on, you really do want the best players available for all the top matches. And as exciting and all as the 7 codes may be, surely the 15s version has to trump it every time. Then there's the fact that Dupont parachuting into the French 7 squad means that someone who has been involved with the 7s regularly for the past while is likely to miss out. I've also heard talk of Irish 15 stars like maybe Nick Timoney doing likewise. And while the addition of talent like that would certainly help our chances, the actual Irish 7s men's squad has become quite settled over the past few seasons, with genuine stars making names for themselves like Terry Kennedy, Jordan Conroy, and Harry McNulty. And given these players are being denied the opportunity to achieve the honors afforded by playing for provinces, for any of them to also miss out on a medal chance just doesn't sit well with me. Of course, on the women's side, the issue is even bigger, since they don't even need the Olympics to deprive the senior 15 squads of the best available players. I could be wrong, but you have to assume that Ireland's last place finish in the 2023 Six Nations could have been avoided with the likes of Bevan Parsons and Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe involved. But at the end of the day, there's no disputing that 7 into 15 just doesn't go evenly in every sense. The best way forward has to be to keep them apart and prioritize the version of the sport that came first. Right, that's it for our bonus clip this week. Many thanks again for tuning in. As ever, be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe wherever you can, and follow us on any or all of our social media channels.